All right, here we go. Smackdown Lowdown. I'm on my cell phone again today, but we are at least back in the room I normally do these podcasts in. So one of my immediate reactions to this whole thing is that Charlotte keeps coming out more and more and more like Becky's character. It's like they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle twice with this whole thing. Charlotte never comes out to the ring to talk in her wrestling gear anymore, where she usually did before. Not to say she always did before, but she usually did, right? So this is kind of, she comes out, she's got a bad attitude, or she's more confrontational, at least, and a little bit more edgy than she would normally be. It's a development that I like for her character. It's just obviously they're trying to do a little bit of a Becky Lynch thing with it, though. It's just obvious at this point, and I almost feel like maybe they'd be better off not doing that right now when it's as obvious as it is. It's just so glaringly obvious right now, whereas maybe 3 months from now, it wouldn't be, right? Maybe if she was coming out like this after WrestleMania at some point in time, I wouldn't be shocked if they're on different shows after WrestleMania. I mean, Becky is going after the Raw Women's Championship, right? And so far, she's not in a program involved for the SmackDown Women's Championship anymore. So I have a feeling that means that it's reasonable to expect that she'll be on, Becky will be on Raw for the majority, or at least the last half of 2019, the last 8 months of 2019, right? Because I think with all this buildup, it's pretty obvious she's probably going to beat Ronda Rousey. But there's a little bit of some gamesmanship going on here, because it's not Raw that's going to network television in 2019. It's SmackDown, right? SmackDown is going to Fox. And because SmackDown is going to Fox, SmackDown needs names. There's even talk of the plan for the company is they're hoping that 2020 WrestleMania will be on a network like Fox or NBC, like the Super Bowl, on free TV for everybody to see, with commercials and ads and people talking people who don't, because you know how people who don't necessarily really enjoy football all that much still watch the Super Bowl. It's become like a cultural thing. By getting SmackDown and other WWE programming on the Fox networks, SmackDown on regular over-the-air television, free Fox, and apparently there's going to be some other WWE programming on FS1. Fox is equivalent to ESPN type channel, 24-hour sports channel. So, I mean, that's something to look, I don't know if forward to is the right term, but I'm interested to see what it's going to look like at the very least. And so by doing this little switcheroo, flip-flopper thing, if Becky does beat Ronda at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's Championship, I think what you should expect to see is Ronda move into SmackDown, because she's a household name to people who don't necessarily watch wrestling, right? And she'll draw more viewers, even though wrestling fans are more into Becky Lynch, and that's fine, and WWE does do certain things for wrestling fans. I think we all know that the kind of people who watch this show and the kind of people who are out there making their own YouTube shows and the people who are out there doing this that are way, way, way bigger than me, we're the diehards. We're not the audience the WWE is all that concerned with. They throw us little bones here and there to keep us happy, but what they really want is they want the people that maybe don't watch the pay-per-views. I mean, WWE Network's only got, I think I heard 2 million subscribers as of last. That's not much. You know? It's really not. It's not very much. I mean, they make a lot of money off of us at $10 a month, and I would gladly pay more. If they put it up to 12, I wouldn't be jumping ship. You know what I mean? They make a lot of money off of us at $10 a month, 2 million subscribers. It's a lot of dough. So it's not a bad gig for them, but they want more than 2 million viewers for something like WrestleMania, which of course they would normally naturally get. There's people who buy the network for a month just for that. But they want to have, I don't think they'll ever reach Super Bowl numbers, but they want a bigger market share than what they have as far as people, not just wrestling, but TV time, how you're spending your finite time with which to entertain yourself. WWE is looking for a bigger chunk of the overall audience. And the way to do that is to be on free television. That's part of how to do that. But also how to do that is to have your biggest stars on free television. And so even though Becky is the biggest star right now to us, the biggest star in general is probably Ronda. She's got the biggest name. You don't need to be a wrestling fan to know who Ronda Rousey is. She's been in movies. She was in the Olympics, UFC. I don't have to say no more about that. So don't be surprised if Becky goes to Raw after WrestleMania, if she wins that Raw Women's Championship, and Ronda ventures over to SmackDown to have programs with Charlotte Flair. And if Charlotte is kind of being the antagonist and coming out in a leather jacket and dark colored, lipstick or whatever, and trying to be kind of a badass when she's talking to Ronda, it'll come off way more natural than when she's doing it to Becky, who's kind of already mastered that song, So the next thing that kind of happened during this, though, so Charlotte and Becky, they're coming out, they're arguing. Charlotte's getting she's having her best heel run of my memory right now. And she comes out and has a couple of really nice insults to Becky. And then Triple H, he comes out and he throws Charlotte, not physically, but he tells Charlotte to leave the ring. He's like, get out of here, this doesn't concern you. And he tells Becky, he's like, you got to go to the doctor if you want to get that suspension lifted and you want to fight Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania. All you got to do is go to the doctor. That's all we're asking of you. And then Becky asked Tripp, was Stephanie medically cleared after I punched her in the face? So... And Tripp, he keeps it together for the most part, but he calls he calls Becky self-destructive and a coward, basically, and talks about Survivor Series and how she went and she caused all that trouble on Raw right before her match with Ronda because she knew that she was probably going to get hurt doing that, causing all that problems on Raw. She knew she'd probably get hurt doing that. And she wanted to get hurt doing that because she didn't want to have to fight Ronda. So he's like calling her a coward. He's like, you're doing these crazy things that make you look like you're not afraid of anybody, but really the one person you're afraid of is Ronda Rousey, and you don't want to fight her. So this is an interesting angle and an interesting way to play up the fact that she got legitimately, not kayfabe, injured by Nia Jax before Survivor Series. And this is kind of a nice little play on that. I don't think that what Triple H said is true at all. I mean, I know it's all fake, but within her character, I don't think what he said is true. But I think it's a nice little way to add drama to the situation and add a little bit of drama to Becky's situation while not having her in the ring, which I think is, again, I've said on the last video, I think not having Becky in the ring right now is a smart move. It gives other people more time, but it also prevents anything from happening. I think they have to protect that WrestleMania matchup a little bit. We were really excited about it for Survivor Series, and a lot of people were really bummed out when we didn't get it. And the only way to prevent that from happening again, realistically speaking, is to keep Becky out of the ring a little bit. So the next thing, I got to go check my stuff here. Becky slaps Triple H. Yeah, this is like, I mean, I know it just keeps getting said, but Becky's like Stone Cold level right now, like almost. They're as close as anybody I've seen in recent memory to getting to that organically, because I truly attest to the fact, or I stick by my guns when I say that we weren't supposed to cheer for Becky. Becky was supposed to turn heel, and Charlotte was supposed to be the conquering hero of that whole situation. And instead, people just embraced this new Becky Lynch. And the company could have not given us what we wanted. And in this instance, they really did. They listened to the fans. They gave us what we wanted. So that's why I always compare her to Stone Cold, is because I feel like that was so organic, and we weren't necessarily supposed to cling to Stone Cold the way we did. We really weren't. I mean, we weren't supposed to hate him necessarily, but we weren't supposed to, like, he wasn't meant to be the biggest star in the company. He just became it, right? So, the next thing that happens is we get Nakamura and Rusev versus the Good Brothers, Luke and Carl, and I just don't know why. Like, it was a good match-ish. It certainly wasn't a bad match. There were some good spots in it. I was entertained by some of it, but I just don't know why at this point. Like, why that match? Like, I kind of get why you're pairing Nakamura and Rusev together. Like, I kind of understand that a little bit. But, like, why this match? I don't know. Some of the good spots, though, Lana screaming at Nakamura outside of the ring to get up in a very American accent. She just needs to drop the Russian thing. And they eventually, Nakamura and Rusev do win the match in a very kind of like heely, shenanigans type fashion. Pretty typical for what they've had going on in the ring recently. And I've just kind of, like I said, I'm just kind of left wondering why. It wasn't a bad match. If you were entertained by it, I can't begrudge you that. There were some good spots. But I just wasn't. It wasn't for me. Then we have Randy Orton versus Mustafa Ali, which actually was a very good match. Had a lot of really good spots. Ali takes off in a pretty violent, he takes a pretty violent slam off the announce table early in the match. And the announce table hadn't been cleared of any of the stuff. Like, it had all the announce table stuff they usually throw off of there right on there. And it looked like a pretty violent, hard slam, to be honest with you. Very good spot. Orton has a top rope superplex that just, man, it looked like it was so good. The pendulum action of, like, Ali's body swinging from the top of the turnbuckle over Orton's shoulder and back onto the mat was... They don't always look that good. So if you haven't seen it, it's even that one spot in that match is really good. Like they really, superplexes are always cool, but they don't always look that good. And this one looked real good. See here. Orton gets thrown over the announce desk, and he kind of like hits a chair, and he's on the floor at one point in time. And Mustafa really, really, really brings it. Once he gets Randy back in the ring, he earns a near fall out of the situation, and he earns another near fall after countering an RKO with a tornado DDT off the top rope. This was another really good, or it might have been the middle rope. This is another really good spot in the match. And again, earning the near fall, my heart skipped a beat. It was cool. But then Orton kind of hits an RKO out of nowhere after the tornado DDT situation. Ali goes up to the top rope again to hit his inverted 540, the 054, right. He's up there on the top rope, so he's got his back to the ring, and Orton gets up off the ground and grabs Ali's ankles and throws him back, kind of jerks him back off the turnbuckle, and in the process transitions that into an RKO. It was one of the best RKOs. There's been a few of them within like a couple of weeks on TV and pay-per-views that have been really, really good. This was a really good RKO. And that was the end of that. That was the end of that match. But then out of nowhere, Samoa Joe just comes up and throws a coquina clutch on Randy and puts him to sleep. And after Randy gets put to sleep and Samoa Joe gives Ali a few stomps for good measure, Daniel Bryan shows up with Rowan to stare at Joe a little bit. And Daniel's kind of dressed in a bit of a callback to his American Dragon character from Ring of Honor. And that's a pretty cool little thing. Neither guy, again, is wearing any WWE gear except for the granola belt, which I'm sure they're going to be selling at WrestleMania. So I don't expect Daniel Bryan to lose that belt anytime between now and WrestleMania. I think they really want to sell a bunch of those belts at and before WrestleMania. So kind of takes a little bit of the drama out of the Elimination Chamber situation. But if anything we're seeing on SmackDown with the men involved with that Elimination Chamber situation is to be a sign of anything to come. Even if we know with reasonable expectation how it's going to end, this should be a really good match. The guys involved all really bring it and all seem to be like really, really suited to being out there with each other. We know that Randy and Daniel Bryan have really good chemistry together in the ring. Same can be said with Samoa Joe and Daniel Bryan. Samoa Joe and Mustafa Ali have proven to have good in-ring chemistry. Same with Randy and Mustafa Ali. Jeff Hardy can wrestle with anybody. We have seen Samoa Joe and Randy Orton in programs with him recently, and they were all good. So, and AJ Styles can wrestle with anybody and has had feuds with all these guys pretty much. This is going to be a good Elimination Chamber match. Couldn't ask for a better one. I'm actually, despite the fact that it's the first ever women's tag belt, and a women's tag belt is something I thought that WWE has needed for a long time, I'm more excited for this Elimination Chamber match than I am the women's tag belt match. And I'm usually a big proponent of like women's wrestling, and I think that for the most part the women are better than the men right now. But this match to me has a lot going for it, and I'm really looking forward to it. Daniel and Eric, they had a spot. It was really good. Kind of reminds me of CM Punk a little bit. Like the things he's saying aren't bad, right? There's nothing heelish about the things he's saying. It's the holier-than-thou attitude with which he is delivering them. It really kind of does remind me of like the straight edge sort of thing that Punk, was famous for. Like I said, neither of them's wearing any WWE gear. Eric was wearing a T-shirt underneath his flannel, and it was an Amon Amarth T-shirt, and that might not be pronouncing that right. They're kind of like a. I always think of them. They remind me of like Vikings. And I know that Viking metal is kind of like one of them goofy metal subgenres or whatever. I don't want to classify something as that and be, wrong. But it always reminds me of that. And they're kind of a little bit, they're not super, they're famous enough, I guess, but they're not super commercial, obviously. So it kind of fits in with the kind of hipster, holier than thou, I'm better than you kind of thing that they have going on right now. And also with Daniel Bryan looking more like his American Dragon character from Ring of Honor than he does his normal Daniel Bryan garb, also kind of distances. It's good heel heat for the WWE. Neither one of them is representing the WWE in any kind of way other than that Granola Championship, which is also different. This is some actually really good creativity with the way they're making him a heel and the way that they're visually separating Eric Rowan and Daniel Bryan from the rest of the WWE. They don't come out dressed like normal WWE wrestlers anymore. I dig it. Then we had a match with Mandy and Sonya versus Carmella and Naomi and the Iconics. Again, I don't really know why. All three of these teams are going to be in the Elimination Chamber match, and we know that. So I just don't know why we're getting this match. It wasn't an altogether bad match. The Iconics had a pretty cool team knee slam spot where I believe Billie Kay was kind of sitting with her knee, kind of taking a knee with one knee sticking out in the ring, and Peyton Royce came by and slammed somebody's face, I can't remember whose, right off of that knee, and it was a pretty violent looking, pretty brutal looking spot. And Naomi got a good kind of top mount, ground and pound revenge spot against Mandy Rose, but it was all for naught because it was interrupted by one of the Iconics. And once Naomi was done, I think it was Billie Kay. Once Naomi was done dealing with Billie Kay or Peyton Royce, could have been either one of them. I think it was Peyton. Now that I think about it, it doesn't matter. So it was all for naught, though, because Naomi deals with the Iconic, who is interloping in the situation, only to have Mandy Rose interlope herself back into that situation and get a pin on Naomi. And again, it's kind of a meaningless, useless pin. I kind of hope they drop this feud. Mandy Rose in a towel. We just don't need to see any more of that. Like, Jey Uso's, obviously, or Jimmy. Naomi's husband is obviously not cheating. I have trouble telling those two apart. Any of the twins, I have trouble with. Anyway, so I'm personally, we saw an Andrade spot where he kind of had like a video recorded promo, and I'm usually not a big fan of those. But this one was okay. Andrade, I am a big fan of, and I expect that at Elimination Chamber, there's going to be some sort of a match between him and Rey Mysterio. It just only seems right at this point. There's only 4 matches being advertised for Elimination Chamber right now, and the Cruiserweight Championship match, I can only imagine, is going to get bumped to the pre-show. So, make of that what you will. I'm sure we've got at least 3 or 4 matches that are going to get added to Elimination Chamber card at this point, and I would not be surprised if Mustafa Ali, Rey Mysterio was one of them. So then we have Daniel Bryan versus Jeff Hardy, and this is, again, kind of a why match. Like, I get why in the storyline they're doing it. Jeff Hardy is sweat and bled for that title, and Daniel Bryan went through it in the garbage and comes out with his granola belt that he thinks is better. And it's not even just a question of, like, because there's been a lot of personalized titles, but this is a question of, like, he has, like, an objection to the one that they've been using. So, and Jeff Hardy has an objection to that. So, but we all know how it's going to end, kind of. Like, it didn't end how I thought it was going to end, but we knew that Jeff Hardy wasn't going to pin Daniel Bryan cleanly or anything like that. That would weaken him too much, I think, going into Elimination Chamber. So, and we kind of have, I think, again, like I laid out, good suspicion that he's not going to lose that belt anytime in between now and WrestleMania. So we want him strong going into the Elimination Chamber. But at one point in time in the match, toward the end, Hardy interrupts the yes kicks with a twist of fate. It was a really good spot. And then he turns that into a swanton bomb. And then he turns that into a fall, a legit fall. It should have been a fall. That should have been the end of the match right there. Daniel Bryan should have lost. But the match was interrupted by Eric Rowan pulling Jeff Hardy off of Daniel Bryan. And Daniel Bryan then went around, and the match was disqualified then at that point. But Daniel Bryan turns around and throws the yes lock on Jeff Hardy. And during that process, Samoa Joe runs back out, throws the Coquina clutch on Daniel Bryan, and then Randy Orton is still mad from earlier when Samoa Joe interrupted his match. He comes out, he tries to, I think he hits an RKO. Either way, Mustafa Ali then runs in. He knocks over everyone that was still standing. He clears them all until Rowan slams Ali through the announce table, and then AJ Styles comes out and he absolutely clears the ring. It's bedlam. It's absolute bedlam. I'm legitimately really pumped for Elimination Chamber, and that's pretty much how the show ended, with AJ Styles complaining to a reporter for being right in, or not AJ Styles, excuse me, Daniel Bryan complaining to a reporter for being right in his face after he's just had a match, and AJ Styles smugly standing in the ring. So here we go. One more SmackDown and one more Raw until we get to Elimination Chamber, which is shaping up to be actually a pretty fun pay-per-view. The road to WrestleMania, we're on it. All right, see you.